Cuffs are off, man. Get right. Too many left in these leagues, but I ain't gonna leave. I'ma get right. Get right. Down to the bottom and scratch it for all the...
Hey everybody, Adam Rank here.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus Grant.
This is AJ Dillon of the Green Bay Packers.
I got to give a shout out to y'all at Get Right Fantasy.
If you are not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Do you want to lose your league?
On a league, check out the Get Right Fantasy Network.
You got to get right with the Get Right Fantasy Network.
Best of luck with your podcast. Appreciate the support.
And you're tuned in to watch my boys at Get Right Fantasy Network. Get you right. Enjoy the show.
But I tune in every Friday. Strategies provided, I will lock in every way. So go and roll your sleeves up. Yeah, go and roll your sleeves up. And I'm getting down cause I roll my sleeves up. And I'm getting right cause I roll my sleeves up.
Yo, welcome to another episode of The Extra Point. I'm your host, Phil Ruskin. Damn, it feels good to be back. I was traveling for work last week and didn't get to do the show, which was a big bummer. But we're going to recap some stuff that happened in week one. We'll recap a little bit of week two, get you ready for Thursday night football, DFS for the week three. I've got some props that I like, so we're going to go through all of that. But before we start, y'all know what to do. Hit that subscribe and like button. Make sure you are sharing the content within your leagues, your friends, your family, your home leagues. Helps build the brand. If you like what you are seeing here on the stream, you can always listen along as well on Spotify and Patreon. That helps build the brand over there as well. And then, of course, I've got written content over at dynastyprosfootball.com. I am a staff writer there. So, yeah, let's dive in. And big announcement coming for me. I'm adding a Wednesday show. So I originally thought Thursdays because of preseason, and then obviously in the summer we were doing the show super late, and I thought, man, this will be super easy to continue, and then kind of forgot about Thursday night football. So obviously we're doing this show backing right up to the start, the kickoff of Thursday night football. So I'm going to keep this show as kind of a DFS and betting podcast, and only 30 to 45 minutes. And then Wednesdays, I'm going to be adding a show live stream as well. And that'll go back to what we've been doing. That'll be kind of what's going on in the lay of the land of the NFL, dynasty outlook, trade talks, who should I be targeting on the waiver wire for redraft this week. So we'll get more into like the football content. And that's obviously going to speak to a lot more of the viewers. But if you're enjoying the DFS and the betting side, make sure you're tuned in every Thursday. And of course, you can always catch the recordings on the Extra Point on YouTube or listen along on Spotify and Patreon. So real quick, let's take you through the schedule before we get into what everybody's here for, which is, of course, the content itself. Get Right Fantasy Network. Obviously, that's the host. That's our group. We love the guys. On Mondays, you can get with Anthony and Frank, 9 p.m. They're going to be doing a recap and waiver show every Monday night. Tuesday, you got our boy Tycoon over at the Fantasy Boardroom, taking you through all types of great content, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Wednesdays, Anthony and Frank are back doing roster management at 9 p.m. Pacific, buy, sell, trade targets, and I'm going to be doing my show probably 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m. on Wednesdays as well. TBD, but we'll get there by next week. And then on Thursdays, it's your boy. We're doing Thursday night setup. We're getting everything ready for DFS and betting here at 4 o'clock with me. And then Friday's the big content day. Make sure you are tuned in. We got two shows. They go back to back. Mike and Kendall taking care of the East Coast team, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. They're going to be going through half of the main slate. All the games, not the main slate. That's my brain working on DFS already. They're going to be going through half of the games in totality with start-sit decisions, making sure you got your lineups dialed in for the week as well. Finishing up, myself and Anthony Rasta, we will go as soon as Mike and Kendall wrap their show at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern with the second half. So you can get all of the games with our advice, sit-start decisions, who should be in your lineup. And then, of course, if you have any last lingering questions, make sure you catch our boy Classic Mike on Sundays, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, as he takes you through the last-minute news, active, inactive, live Q&A, live sit-start advice that will get you right up to the kickoff of the NFL games. So everything that we talk about from a DFS perspective, I actually use both DraftKings and FanDuel. The majority of what I'm going to have covered, and what we'll continue to cover is going to be through DraftKings. And then, of course, all of my prop bets, my higher lowers, that's going to be through Underdog. So Underdog Fantasy, as you all know, best and easiest place for fantasy sports, from their best ball draft tournaments with no season-long commitment, no waivers, no trades, and no weekly lineup setting. You can obviously enter their pick'em contest where you can pick higher or lower on player stats like total yards and touchdowns. And wouldn't it be nice if someone was going to give you some advice on what you should be looking at for some lines there? I think I might know a guy. Make sure to use the promo code GETRIGHT, GETRIGHT, GETRIGHT. Receive a 50% deposit match. They are now giving you up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I can't tell you how badass that is. When I started with Underdog, it was $100. So I am no longer a new customer. But yeah, for those that are new, use that promo GETRIGHT, get a 50% deposit match, up to $1,000 capped in bonus cash. Visit underdogfantasy.com and download the fastest growing fantasy app from your app store today. I got hit up this week a couple times from a couple of people I play with in leagues. I'm in a ton of leagues, but they wanted to know, because we do the show every week, DFS and Betting Props. Hey, Phil, you had all these week 1 props. How'd you do? So let's go over them real quick. In week 1, we had the Chiefs hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. I only took props for that game, so I didn't do the whole week on the show. I did them on my own. I'm not going to cover those because I didn't go through them on the show. So what I did cover on the show was Travis Kelce was the free square. It was basically a 0.5 yards. Obviously, we took the over on that. He obviously hit it, although not by much. We also had Derrick Henry. We liked Derrick Henry on the over for a rushing touchdown. That was a win. Rashee Rice, 61.5 receiving yards. I took the over. That was a win. Patrick Mahomes, 1.5 passing touchdowns. I took the over. That was a no. He only threw 1 passing touchdown. Xavier Worthy in his 21-yard rushing touchdown, messing up my betting line, Xavier Worthy. Just had to say nice things about you this summer, and I would have got Patty Mahomes for 2 touchdowns there. Saquon Barkley was an anytime touchdown scorer. I took the over on that. That was a winner. And I took Devonta Smith for 11.15 fantasy points, full PPR. Took the over on that. He only he got it, but he got it on the last play of what was the last play of his game. So we went 5-1 in week 1. So awesome to put some money in the bank, but also just feeling really good about the way that I was perceiving the game, and then obviously how it played out. So got Rasta here. What up, my guy? Always here checking us out, showing us love. What up, boss? Love having him in the house. So that was week 1 recap. Let's jump in and do some Underdog props and what I like for tonight. And then because it's early enough in the week, I want to give you some lines that I think could and probably should hit for the weekend. So let's start with tonight. Look, the Jets defense is, on paper, it's awesome. It's awesome, but it's just not been what it's been advertised these first 2 weeks. They're pretty susceptible right now. It's 11th against the tight end position in terms of total yards and receptions given up. There's 2 more guys, and you forgive me for the names off the top of my head, but a linebacker and a lineman that are also missing tonight. So I don't love this game environment. I'm just not thrilled on either one of these teams, but there are some players I think are going to have good nights. So Ramondre Stevenson, these are on Underdog. If you want to pull your app, if you feel like these are lines that you like, go ahead and jump in. Please play responsibly. Only bet what you can afford to lose. But Ramondre Stevenson, 17 rushing attempts. I'm taking the over on that. He was at 21 and 24 rushing attempts in week 1 and week 2 this year so far. Look, Jacoby Brissett's I won't call him a game manager, but he's not throwing. He's not pushing the ball downfield. It's very clear what the Patriots want to do. They want to get the ball to Ramondre. They want to hide their quarterback, and they want to win ugly. And so for me, I think Ramondre at 17 rushing attempts, he should hit that line tonight. I really feel like that's a line that should be well within his range of outcomes. So on the other side of the ball, look, it's Breece Hall. We all know he's the guy. There's no surprises there. But what's really been nice about Breece is that his usage is off the charts. I mean, it's just through the roof. So I like Breece tonight. The line I have him for is 5.5 targets. I'm going to take the over. He has actually gotten that both weeks. So I will take the over on 5.5 targets in the passing game there from Old Man Rodgers. Hunter Henry, I mentioned already. Look, last week, 109 yards, 12 targets. I mean, it was chaos. He's not going to repeat that. Don't expect that again. But the line on him tonight is 34.5 receiving yards. I'm going to take the over. Like I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, the Jets are giving up the 11th most receiving yards and targets to the tight end position. We just don't love the wide receivers there in New England. And like I said, I think it's pretty clear what they want to do, right? Get the ball to Ramondre as much as they can. So 34.5 receiving yards. I think it's going to be pretty close. That's probably my scariest line here tonight, but I feel confident that Hunter Henry can get there in the over. And I know I'm going to probably get a raft of shit for this one, but I don't like taking unders because I don't like rooting against players. But Garrett Wilson, 5.5 receptions. I'm going to take the under tonight. I have to pull my stats real quick on him. He hasn't gotten there yet this season. It's not a great game. Like I mentioned, it's not a great game environment. So he has had 6 receptions and 4 receptions, respectively. Week 1, 6 against the Niners. And then 4 receptions last week against Tennessee. Tennessee's defense is interesting. It's actually better than we thought. So, take that one for what you want. If you believe in it, play it. I'm going to play it. If you don't, I don't fault you. But Garrett Wilson has not lived up to the round 1, round 2 advertising. So I'm going to take the under tonight on Garrett Wilson, 5.5 receptions. Joe Ortiz in the chat, Wilson going to get 5 by halftime. Look, that's how it goes sometimes. It might just be a hyper targeted night from Aaron Rodgers. So the one caveat I think a lot of people say is, oh, you're going to play this as an entire parlay card. I didn't. I split it. And I think if you want to make money, that's actually a really smart way to play. So I have Ramondre and Brees on their own card. I feel safest with what I've got for their lines tonight. I am taking overs on both. And I've got Garrett Wilson and Hunter Henry on their own card. And if it fails, it fails. No big deal. But, just stagger your bets. And I think that's how it becomes a little bit more fun rather than having to sit there with a, 4, 5, 6-legged parlay card. Put 2 cards in, put 3 cards in, however many lines you want to take, split them up, whichever you feel is strongest. And it's a good betting strategy. You have a much, much higher percentage of a chance to win where you feel really strong versus just having everything hit. Sure, you'll get the biggest payout, but unless you're taking the insured pays where you got, 4 have to hit, 5 have to hit out of the 6 or 7 that you're putting in, I think it's a good way to play. Some other lines that I like this week as we get into the main slate. Before I go through the actual lines themselves, some of these players are going to be in my DFS lineups just based off of volume and what I project this week alone. I mentioned early at the top of the show on Friday nights, you can get our full sit starts. Rasta, I haven't looked at the show sheet yet. I don't know if we're talking about the Niners game or if Kendall and Mike are doing it, but Brandon Ayuk's in a smash spot this week. No CMC, which means Jordan Mason's in there. Debo's out. Now George Kittle's not practicing. He's a very serious question mark for the weekend to potentially not play. So the game's, Brandon Ayuk's been obviously slow starter. He sat out the majority, if not all of training camp, obviously with the contract dispute. But Brandon Ayuk at 68.5 rushing and receiving yards. So it's a totality there. Obviously, he's not Debo. He's probably not lining up in the backfield, but Shanahan does some funny things. Don't be surprised if he does give Brandon Ayuk an end around as the college version, the jet sweep, right? So 68.5 total yards for Ayuk. I'm going to take the over on that. I think this is a good week for Ayuk, especially if Kittle doesn't play. I think that line becomes even stronger. Again, that's probably a line that could get bet up. So if you feel strong about it, I've already locked this card in because I think that line could go up, especially if the news about Kittle is negative. But I like Brandon Ayuk on the over 68.5. Saquon Barkley, I've got 18 rushing attempts this week, and I'm taking the over on that. And it's look, no AJ Brown again this week. Devonta Smith should eat. Rushing attempts in the first 2 weeks have been 24 and 22 for Mr. Barkley there. So only 18. I actually thought the line was a little low, especially with the news, and we knew that AJ Brown wasn't going to play again this week. I took the rushing attempts over the rushing yards because it does bother me a little bit that Jalen Hurts could call his own number. I think if my memory's right, 85 yards and a touchdown on the ground for Jalen Hurts last week. So at this point, I don't care what Barkley's total is because I just need him to rush more than 18 times. And I think he's going to get there. He's gotten there in both games. No A.J. Brown again, which, again, Hurts could take some of that, but I think it's going to be another game where they feature Hurts, Barkley, and Devonta Smith. This line is one that I love. It's Raheem Mostert is practicing. Jeff Wilson is practicing. I don't think it matters. I think Achane is the guy either way. So I've got Devon Achane over 23.5 receiving yards. That's a line, obviously, last week that he cleared pretty easily. Obviously going for 69 receiving yards last week and then 76 in week 1. Again, I felt this line was pretty low given what he's been doing these last couple of weeks. And so, again, with Tua being out, the game's in Seattle, Skylar Thompson's first start, I expect Mike McDaniel to give Devon Achane just about all that he can handle, and certainly getting Jalen Wright involved if Mostert's healthy. But, if they're just now starting to practice these guys, I can't imagine they're taking the ball out of Achane's hands. So 23.5 receiving yards. Give me the over on that one. And then Gibbsy, another game environment that I think could and probably should be a shootout, a game, that environment that we really like with the Cardinals and the Lions. So give me Jahmyr Gibbs at 3.5 receptions. I will take the over. He has cleared that in both weeks this week. Both weeks of this season. And again, if he's going to go 20, 30, 40, 60, whatever his total is going to be, that's fine. But I just need the receptions on this one. So these were some lines that they kind of stood out like this, way too low for what these players are capable of. So again, it's betting. Nothing's guaranteed. You have to take, everything with some risk. But, I like to use a lot of data. I like to use a lot of numbers when I make these decisions, especially when I'm putting my own money on the line. And like I said, these lines, they just seemed too low. So I took all the overs. And again, I don't like betting unders unless it's a crazy line, because I want to root for players. I certainly don't want to root against players. So I'm going to pause before we get into the DFS cash lineups. Rost is saying we will always have our Niners game, so that's good to know. So we'll always have the Niners as one of our featured games we talk about on Friday nights for those sit-start decisions. Although we may not have much to talk about, Rasta, then ain't nobody playing this week. I'm Rasta also saying I'm mad at our strength and conditioning coach, why everyone has a hammy or a calf strain, except the guy who's always from the facility holding out. It should be the other way around. Yeah, Brandon Ayuk's healthy. He's like the one guy right now that you can kind of plug and play if you're playing the Niners. Obviously, Jordan Mason, if you're playing a Niner and he's in your lineup, you can plug and play in that one as well. So as we switch gears off of Underdog and our over and under segment, let's jump into some of my, again, cash game pool player pool, And again, for those that might be new to the DFS space, cash game, we're really looking for ceiling. We're looking for who can be the highest scorers at their position, who can, quote unquote, break the slate. And we're not necessarily looking for tournament plays, those large field tournaments where those are called GPPs, guaranteed prize pools. But that's where you're looking for, I played Quentin Johnston last week in a GPP. It made me, pull the dodgeball and kind of, throw open my mouth a little bit to press the button on his name. I felt like it was a good game environment. He scored 2 touchdowns. He ended up being the difference maker for me and won me some money last week. So thanks, QJ, for probably the only 2 touchdowns you're going to score all year. But the GPPs, you're really looking for those outlier positions, ways to get different guys that probably aren't in anyone's regular fantasy lineup, certainly not in your redraft lineups, but they get a touchdown or 2 and all of a sudden that completely changes your outlook for the entire week from a DFS perspective. So in cash, we're looking for high ceiling, who can be the overall number 1 finisher. I like 4 quarterbacks this week. I'll start at the top. I mentioned it a little bit already with the props. I like Jalen Hurts at 7,300. I think, again, as I mentioned, 85 yards on the ground last week and a touchdown. It is hard to bet against Jalen Hurts. With no A.J. Brown, I think it's an even stronger play. It is an expensive buy-up. I think he's quarterback 2 on the week in terms of price. So you just have to kind of figure out how you want to go and put your lineup together. He's in my cash pool because I haven't made my lineups yet. I usually do 2 or 3 different cash lineups. I'll probably have some exposure in a game where I'll stack him with Devonta Smith because I'm going to preview and talk about him in a little bit here. But I do like these other 3 quarterbacks a little bit better than Hurts just based off of price. And that quarterback 2 on my list this week is Kyler Murray. $6,900 for the price. So, $400 savings. You can then allocate that elsewhere, which I really like. I love the game environment against Detroit. Hoping for a shootout. Marv did what we all drafted Marv to do last week. 2 touchdowns. He did it all in the first quarter, which was amazing. I felt bad because I have him in a couple leagues, and I had a couple buddies that were texting like, look at Marv. And then he just didn't do anything the rest of the day, but he did enough for you early on. I like Kyler this week. Kyler gives you kind of a poor man's Jalen Hurts. He can pass it. He's got Marv, who can obviously take the top off of defense, and then he's going to run a little bit. So I like Kyler at 6,900. And I like the other side of the ball there as well. I like Jared Goff at 6,500. Anytime you've got Jahmyr Gibbs and you've got Laporta and you've got Amon-Ra in that game environment against Kyler and the Cardinals, I think it could be another really good week. And we haven't seen the Lions really take off. So I think this is a week they can get right. So I think for me, Goff is someone I'm really looking at, 6,500 this week. It could be an interesting salary savings. And we got to talk about it. My QB4 on the week right now, as far as my cash player pool goes, Derek Carr. So if you bet the under on the Saints win total this season, that bet's not looking too good right now. If you thought Dennis Allen was going to be looking for a head coaching job next year, which is something that I thought would happen, that's not looking too good right now. So the Saints are hot. If you want to stay in the flames with Derek Carr, I have no problem with that. He's only 5,800. I think he's an interesting cash play. I don't think he's as strong of a cash play as Hurts, Murray, or Goff is, because I just don't know that he can be the overall QB1, but he's done it the first 2 weeks of the season. He's been a top QB. So you'd only need him to basically do about 75% of what he has done to date to actually pay off that salary. And then you could put obviously some more money into some of the other skill positions. So those are the 4 quarterbacks that I like this week, and I will have exposure to at least 2, if not 3 of them in my cash game lineups. At the running back position, it's kind of I hate to do it, but it's kind of a carbon copy of last week. Last week, I loved Jordan Mason because of the volume, and I love Zach Charbonnet because KW3 was out. I've got them both in my pool this week, but I want to start with Saquon Barkley. 7,700. He just projects too well. I think, again, with no A.J. Brown, the way that game script is and the way that they have used him to date this season in that offense, he's someone I'm probably going to have in my lineup at 7,700. And then I can tell you right now, Achan's going to be in my cash lineup at $7,000. I mentioned what I like from the receiving yards, kind of on his prop bets this week. Obviously, we know what he can do as a runner, the usage. The game is at Seattle, which can be difficult for those East Coast teams to come west, just like the West Coast teams going to the East to play those early games. It is a later start game because it's a West Coast game, so I do like that. It gives the guys a couple extra hours to acclimate and get themselves ready. But Achan's usage just projects far too well to not be in the cash lineup at $7,000. I actually think he's mispriced. I think he should probably be a little bit closer to Saquon in terms of pricing. And then again, Jordan Mason at 6,200 and Zach Charbonnet at 6,000. Mason obviously is going to be in there. If George Kittle is out, Mason's going to be in my lineup. He's probably going to be in my lineup either way. But I do have Brandon Ayuk. I'll talk about the wide receiver section here next. I don't love having Mason and Ayuk, so I think I'll probably have one in a cash lineup and the opposite guy in the other one. But if Kittle is out, Mason's usage should go even higher than it is right now, and I think it makes it even a stronger play for Ayuk. So just keep that in mind. To pay attention to the news, tune into Mike's show on Sunday to make sure you've got the most up-to-date information on active inactives. And then Zach Charbonnet, look, I think KW3 is not practicing again. I think he practiced in a very limited fashion. He's not tagged as doubtful right now. He is still a questionable tag, but pay attention to the news. We got a couple more days here before the game on Sunday. And I'll be honest, if Skylar Thompson, obviously he is the quarterback, you might not play KW3 if you're the Seahawks. I think they're probably thinking they can win that game, with Charbonnet and obviously the receivers that, JSN had a good week last week. It's it's still Tyreek Hill. It's still Jalen Waddle. The same thing we used to talk about and do talk about with Tua. Skylar Thompson can throw a 5-yard pass and Tyreek can run the other 70 for your 75-yard touchdown. The difference is he can't push the ball down the field, and there's obviously some holes in his passing game if you watched a little bit of it last week, which was just atrocious in that Buffalo beatdown. But Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Jordan Mason, and Zach Charbonnet in my running back pool this week for cash. Let's move to the wide receiver position. I have 5 players here, pretty heavy, as you can tell, on the Eagles this week. It's a volume play. I just 6,900 for Devonta Smith is priced way too low. I don't, I think if my memory's right, they were the Monday night game, so that was probably why he got the Monday night discount, because the pricings do come out the day before on Sunday night. So that's probably why he was priced down so far. But again, we knew AJ Brown wasn't going to be available this week. We knew it was a 2, potentially, Manny is a 4-week injury. So Devonta Smith projects really, really well. He's obviously the guy there, and I think it should be another big week. Devonta Smith is a lock. He's really the only player right now that is absolutely locked into my cash lineup at 6,900. The next 2 guys I want to talk about, you can take your pick, and I'm going to start with the cheaper of the 2 because he's been the better of the 2, and that's Rashid Shaheed at 5,300. Rashid Shaheed has done what Rashid Shaheed always does, and he catches big, long touchdowns. So he's a great best ball play, a guy that you just don't have to worry about on a weekly basis. But Carr's been finding him. He's been catching big, long touchdowns. I mean, the Saints are passing the ball. The offense looks good. They've got Clint Kubiak running the pre-snap motion. They look like a proper NFL team. So at 5,300, Rashid's somebody I'm probably going to have some exposure to. And look, Chris Olave hasn't scored, but at 6,300 for an extra $1,000, if you pay down at quarterback, I think you can squeeze him in the lineup. Obviously, don't play the 2 of those guys together, but Chris Olave's due. He's due, man. And so I think at some point it's going to be a touchdown going his way. I'm going to be pretty tuned in this week to what the reports say in practice and how guys look, because I'm going to have exposure to one of the 2 Saints wide receivers. Right now, my lean is Shaheed, just based off what we've seen, his usage, his involvement in the offense, and then obviously his ability to get open and Carr to find him. But I think Olave could have a good week. So take a look at the Saints receivers. You'll notice I didn't mention Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara is going to eat again. I think he's going to have another great week. He's priced up too high for me. So I'd rather go elsewhere, because at the number 1 running back position, he has to finish as the RB1 or 2 to pay that off. He certainly can, but you can't jam all these guys into the lineup and still have enough money left over. So I think the way that I've laid it out this week is projecting out guys that should be pretty high volume, where you can actually get a pretty good return. And I find a punt play at the tight end position, or I find a super cheap, Yoshi Voss has been my cheap kind of punt play the last 2 weeks for Cincinnati. Obviously that hasn't gone well. So I'd rather go somewhere else than just find the cheap punt play this week. So 6,300 for Olave, 5,300 for Shaheed. And then Brandon Ayuk at 6,200. I talked about him already. Again, that Niners team is, man, we're banged up. I think Brandon Ayuk projects really well, even if George plays. There's still no Debo. There's no CMC. So I think Ayuk should have a good week. I think Ayuk will be a lock in my cash lineup if George Kittle does not play this weekend. The challenge with that is he'll probably be a lock in a lot of other people's cash lineups because of that news with Kittle. So you just may have to, get a little different somewhere else because you're probably playing with Ayuk and playing against Ayuk, depending on what type of a cash game that you are in. And then the last guy that I want to mention here at 5,000 is Demarcus Robinson. And it's a thinner play because the Rams are so beat up. They've got 3 offensive linemen that are missing. Stafford's not always, Stafford. He's not always super healthy. But there's no one else to catch the ball. So I think this is a pure volume play from Demarcus Robinson. If you want to pivot off of Ayuk and go with Shaheed, Robinson, and then pay up somewhere else, if you have a particular conviction at the running back spot, or you want to pay up for Hurts, or you want to pay up for, I think CeeDee Lamb's dealing with an ankle injury, but if you want to pay up for, one of the top tier wide receivers, I'm okay with that. But I also feel like it's going to be a day where at some point they have to throw the ball. If I'm, the defense, I'm probably stacking the box and telling Stafford beat us because we're afraid that Kyron can. I don't think anyone else will with no Cooper Kupp and no Puka Nakua. So I like Demarcus Robinson at 5K. I still think you can go there in cash. I think he'll be a really popular tournament play. So I don't know that I would really use him in a tournament. If you do use him in a tournament, go somewhere super different somewhere else because I think he's going to project really, really popular on the slate itself. Let's get into some tight ends, and then we will finish with the old defense. I don't like paying up for tight end. It's just not something I normally do. I usually take the punt play, but there's two guys this week that are a little bit more expensive on the card. Number one's Brock Bowers. I mean, you watched that game last week against the Ravens, his involvement, the catches. It's the Brock Bowers we drafted. It's the Brock Bowers that we hoped to see and maybe had questions, would we see it in the Gardner Minshew offense? And we saw it. So at 5,400, he's got to pay it off, meaning he's probably got to score a touchdown. And it's certainly possible. I think he can. Again, I don't always love going there, but because the receivers this week are priced down so far, I actually think you can pay up for a tight end. So keep Brock Bowers in your cash pool at 5,400. This next one, I think, is one of the stronger plays, but it's going to depend if he actually plays. So you need to be really tuned in this week, getting into the weekend. It's Jake Ferguson. He missed last week with the knee injury. It's trending like he's going to play this week. We'll still need to make sure that we, are tuned into the news, but I've loved Jake Ferguson all offseason because it's just CeeDee Lamb. The backfield's a mess. The Cowboys got absolutely obliterated last week by the Saints, and I think they probably, even if they lose the game last week, I think they probably would have had a better chance to at least score a garbage time touchdown had Ferguson been healthy. But Ferguson at 4,500, that's a nice value, and again, pending health. So don't just keep him out of your lineup because he hasn't been playing. Give it a look. Make sure you feel confident about his health going into the game. If you don't play him, I don't blame you. I may not myself. I'm going to be pretty tuned into that. So I'm probably leaning into one of these next two players. The first is Colby Parkinson at 3,600 for the Rams. If you choose not to go the Demarcus Robinson route, please don't play two Rams. Colby Parkinson at 3,600 projects better. He's just a cheaper player. I think it's a whole lot easier to get Colby Parkinson the ball underneath than to wait with a banged up offensive line for Demarcus Robinson to run an out route or to have more time in the pocket for Stafford. So I think of the two Rams, Parkinson is the better play at 3,600. He's probably my lean here early in the week as far as a quote unquote punt tight end, which is generally my strategy as well. There's always the chance that the Rams get in the red zone and he catches the touchdown because they stack the box against Kyron. So I do think if Parkinson's going to score, this may be a good week for him to do it with no wide receivers. And obviously we'll see what the involvement with Kyron and potentially Corum is going to look like. And then this last play is 100% dependent on George Kittle. I had to look this up. I'm probably going to butcher the guy's name. He's on my own team, but it's Eric, I believe, Sauber, but he's a backup tight end in San Francisco. Should tell you how often he gets on the field. It is only if Kittle doesn't play, and it's only because he's $2,500. At $2,500, he needs to catch a pass or two and get you 20 yards. And I think that's certainly within his range of outcomes to get one catch for 20 yards to pay off that salary. And that's going to allow you to pay up to get a higher priced wide receiver, potentially to go with two higher priced, project really well running backs. Or if you're really feeling strongly about Jalen Hurts plus, Saquon, and you want a game stack that way, I think going with the backup tight end here for the Niners would be $2,500 would be a great route. At defense, there's just nothing that I love. Again, like tight end, I just don't want to pay up. It's just not my favorite thing to do. It's just not where I want to go. The defense it's so difficult to project, how they're going to do. I think if you played Cincinnati in your survivor pool against New England the first week, obviously your survivor pool, you're out. I played Cincinnati's defense against New England. I think I got 3 points. So, you just don't know how it's going to go. Even if they don't give up a lot, if they don't get sacks, if they don't get takeaways, you're not scoring. I like the Titans defense this week at home. Titans defense has been sneaky good. It's not pretty. To be fair, I think they've won the defense both of those games, and then Levis has lost it for them. So they've certainly been in the games and then lost it at the end. But at 2,700, you just don't need a ton from the Titans this weekend. And I think that's probably the strongest play on the slate. I think it's going to be really popular. So I'm going to lean the Vikings, and people are going to poo-poo me for that because they're playing the Texans. But if you watch the Niners-Vikings game last weekend, multiple turnovers, multiple takeaways for the Vikings. They didn't give up a ton of points. Held the Niners to 17 points. I love the Texans. I think we certainly expect them to be able to, score in bunches. But Joe Mixon is not practiced again for the second straight day. So if that's the case, and you've got, some pretty good corners there for the Vikings that I think can try to negate a little bit of the wide receivers at 2,400 at home. If they get a takeaway or two and they get 2 or 3 sacks against Stroud, which is certainly possible, you've more than doubled it up and paid off that salary. So don't shy away from the Vikings this week just because they're playing the Texans. I think, again, if you're needing some social proof, just go look at what they did to the Niners at home last week. So those are my guys for the week. That's kind of where I see this DFS slate. Man. And then I'm going to jump in, see if we've got anything in the chat. Not too much tonight, which is everyone's ready for Thursday Night Football, man. Everyone's ready to go and rock. So, well, that's going to do it, guys, for this episode of The Extra Point. Again, these Thursday shows, pretty quick. Want to get through just kind of some underdog prop bets, and then obviously go through my DFS lineups. If you have questions, if you want to, me to feature any content on the show, if you're wondering, some prop bets you like on your own, please feel free to DM me on Sleeper at P Ruskin. I know I've got Wicked Pompano here in the chat. I know he DM'd me last week asking for a couple of suggestions. I got a couple other guys that asked for some suggestions as well. So yeah, more than happy to tell you some of the lines that I didn't feature tonight that I'm also looking at that I like. These are just the lines that I think that stand out to me the most early in the week. But again, it's Thursday. A lot can change between now and Sunday. So enjoy Thursday Night Football. I'm hoping it's a better game than we expect it to be. But, Jets, Patriots, and that divisional rival. Hopefully it is an entertaining game, and best of luck to all of your fantasy teams this week. Excited to be back next week for 2 shows. So I will see you all on Wednesday and then again on Thursday for my individual shows. And for those that are looking for more content, make sure you jump over to Get Right Fantasy Network. We have shows 6 days a week. Give us a like and a subscribe over there. Help the brand. I'll see everybody this Friday night with Rasta as we do our sit starts. And then I'll see you all for more episodes of The Extra Point next week. Thanks, guys. Enjoy Thursday Night Football.